Mhm. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second podcast of IHIMA. I'm joined today with Jessica Carson. She is our first year delegate and our communications committee chair, and I am Jamey McGowen, the IHIMA president. Today we are going to take a gander at AI and what's happening in our HI profession. So Jessica, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's talk about a few areas of AI and how it could impact our profession. Could you give us some insight there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first one that comes to mind is data analysis. I think that is really transforming a lot of the data analysis in healthcare. AI has the ability to process vast amounts of data and do it quickly and ideally pretty accurately. The speed and precision can not only improve our patient outcomes, but it can really take a big impact, like a big role in the efficiency of our operations in healthcare as a whole.
So for those, including me, can you give us an example of what this is actually doing in data analysis?
Sure. I think one that is at the forefront right now is probably predictive analytics.
Mhm.
So what that means, like AI can basically take a ton of historic patient data and now analyze that and use that to predict future health events. So predicting when patients could be at risk of being readmitted, possibly early signs of sepsis, all sorts of other life-threatening conditions, and use that historic data to say, hey, we've seen this happen a lot when patients have ABC. That means that they might be at risk of developing these issues, and it can help them intervene earlier, and they can customize their care plans to avoid that from happening and ensure better outcomes for our patients.
Ah, okay. So kind of like preventative care, help like building
Mhm.
programs. That makes sense. Okay. So what are some other ways? I know I've heard about managing patient records. Do you have any knowledge or any insight on that arena and how it's helping there?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I feel like a lot of people are probably familiar with natural language processing or
Yeah.
NLP. That
Hmm.
can sift through unstructured clinical notes. So like the actual body of the notes. I can find relevant information to make a certain parts of this more accurate. So like it can sort through things and provide alerts, kind of what I was saying with predictive analytics, but it's more real time, where it's saying, hey, like we found this was documented in the chart somewhere else. Do you want to add it here? So it can do all sorts of crazy things, and it really can help with the administrative workload for all sorts of professionals in the clinical setting. And it helps us on the back end with coding and reimbursement because our records can be more up to date and accurate by the time we get them and we're ready to code.
So, right, I just thought of an example. Actually, we're using that in our CDI world where we're looking
Mm-hmm.
at lab values and it can populate like a trigger for a CDI specialist to say, oh, here's maybe an opportunity of some lab values that are
Yep,
abnormal. So that's a great,
query. Yeah,
yeah. So that makes a lot of
let me
sense.
get that in their note.
Yeah. So we already kind of talked about like the documentation piece. What about like coding and billing? So once we've got it documenting, what does it look like from a coding billing? How is AI improving accuracy there?
Yeah, I mean, with the NLP, that's definitely something, computer assisted coding type of things. But
Mm,
in addition to that, there are systems out there now, third parties, where we can send them our actual boost note information, kind of what I was talking about earlier, and their AI models can go through and review and abstract diagnoses and procedures now on more simple accounts. Well, and I say that, but that's just we're using it for more simple accounts.
okay.
And if you implement it properly, there's a lower risk of error than with humans sometimes because it's a little
Yeah.
bit more of an accurate model. That can lead to a decrease in our coding days to get those quick wins out the door faster, and make sure that we're getting proper reimbursement for a lot of stuff. I think also it really helps our coders focus on the complex accounts that maybe AI can't handle, but it gives us the ability to get complicated accounts in the hands of humans and get the easy stuff out the door.
I'll attest to that. I do know that it can be a huge time saver. So that's all great information. Where else? So I'm thinking like population health. Do you have any knowledge or insight on how it's being used in that arena on managing population health and public health issues? I know we kind of talked about a little bit about that, but any other insight?
Yeah, so I mean, we have our ACOs and things like that. A lot of the accountable care organizations are using AI and large data sets to spot trends, patterns, track diseases or outbreaks, and possibly prevent future public health threats. Using that data, it helps them to be able to predict and act more quickly, allocate resources. We can also use that to identify high-risk populations and really dig into that preventative health to make sure that our patients are being well taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, you just saying that, I can't imagine the relief that does, not having to manually track that, and using AI. Let's back up really quickly and talk about, we talked about all the great things, but do you have any insight or experience with what challenges have been in AI and implementing it?
Yeah, I mean, I work in IT, so I know like nothing's perfect. It's as good as how you implement, right? So in order for all of these things to work well, especially talking about data analysis and these AI learning models, they need good data and it needs to be consistent. So garbage in, garbage out. If you're not giving it enough, or if you're not giving it high quality data, the predictions and the insights that you're going to get out of there are going to be off.
Yeah.
Getting it to work well with your other systems too. So, connectivity between your EHR and if it's a third-party vendor, being able to get the data to flow back and forth properly. It can be complicated, and you really need to make sure that you have those subject matter experts involved to make sure that everything's going to flow smoothly.
Oh, for sure.
I think along the lines of quality data, a problem that you can also run into is an algorithm bias. So if your sample size isn't big enough, or you aren't making sure, like if you're piloting at one hospital, but then you don't go back and teach the AI with historic data from other areas, it can really put biases on there because you're looking at one region of one state and not different sides of town or different states. If your organization is huge, you need to make sure that your data is just there. That's really, really important. I think data privacy and security are a big concern for me too, just because if you are connecting with other third-party systems, we want to make sure that those proper channels and protections are there, because we're dealing with sensitive health information, and we want to make sure that we're not causing undue stress to our patients with breaches. We're not causing risk to our organization for all of the downfalls, like the fallout, I guess, of a breach. Those are things that are definitely on my mind.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot of great points. I know you mentioned algorithm bias. I had no idea what that meant until I went to advocacy in Washington, D.C. So if you don't know what that means, HIM professionals, definitely get yourself familiar with those. How do you feel like someone like me, who's in coding and CDI, all of this stuff is like relevant and important to me, but it's not my everyday life. How do you think that, I could educate myself, knowing, some of this is out there and it's not going away?
Sure. Yeah. I think advocating for that strong data governance, regularly checking for those biases. If you are involved on those projects, sometimes we're not necessarily brought to the table for that, but we it's basically exactly what we do for our health records right now, but just making sure that that doesn't fall to the wayside because of all of these advancements in technology, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that they're being used ethically and effectively. Just, overall keeping the train on the tracks, I think, kind of what we're used to in HIM. And there's a lot of teamwork involved in this. I know I kind of mentioned, or I alluded to it earlier, but I work on the IT side, even though I am an HIM professional. And so a lot of what I do is advocating for HIM with my fellow IT colleagues, and making sure everybody's at the table, right? So because there are so many people involved, you need your data scientists, you need clinician involvement, you need HIM professionals, making sure everybody's at the table and advocating for that. If you are involved, just knowing that there are a lot of puzzle pieces.
Oh, for sure. And you are really great at that. So with all of these advancements, I hear a lot at the exec, those people making those decisions of, yeah, let's do this. And maybe we know, those of us that are in the day-to-day work, sometimes we realize like, okay, there's more than just that to think about. So when you were mentioning getting at the table, what is some of the things or skills should the HIM professionals, what should we do to make sure that we bring some value to the table when we work our way in, I should say. What kind of skills do you think we need, and how can we build those?
Yeah, I'm gonna use a little buzzword of data literacy. That's definitely, you hear that a lot. Some people don't necessarily know what that means, but I mean, really understanding what AI holistically is doing, how it works, understanding what and how to work with and interpret large data sets, I think, would be really helpful. So familiarizing yourself with some of those concepts, I think, is really helpful. And I know at our annual meeting for IHEMA last year, we had a really great presentation on ChatGPT that I think it really, the way it was explained was, it was very easy to digest, even if you haven't been in that world for very long. So any type of education that you can get in that way, continuing education, our AHEMA Smart Briefs that AHIMA sends out, I've noticed a lot of articles have a focus on AI, giving updates on what's happening at the federal level as far as governance and oversight. So those are definitely areas where we can stay educated, make sure we stay well read on what's happening out there, and then being able to take that back to our organizations and speak to it. Understanding that, yeah, we're not necessarily always going to be the most technical or, integrated person to talk on the tech side of it, but being able to say, I understand what you're saying, and I have data quality concerns or potential data integrity concerns that then link back to impacts to our profession in our HIM departments. So that's where our folks are most important, right? So you're like, I understand what you're saying so that I know, and I can critically think about the fact that this is going to impact my department or my organization in this way.
Yeah, everybody needs a Jessica at their table. I'll say that. But yeah, those are all really great points. Looking ahead, do you know, or do you foresee, because I'm sure AI is not new in your normal day to day, and it's not going away. Where do you see the future going with AI and HIM what's your personal opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen more and more products being brought in as a possible integration into our day-to-day work, just on the IT side. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's hitting all of our HIM users, but basically anything that happens upstream in the continuum of care, like, it's going to make its way to us eventually, right? If it's in the record. So just knowing that as there's gonna be more and more of these coming in, it's not going away. I think that as these things get folded in and our HIM processes are impacted, it's going to enhance data accuracy and efficiency in an ideal world. And,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, it's all about our patients, right? So
Right.
a lot of these goals are around improving patient care and patient outcomes. So understanding that AI-driven decision support systems and all of this analysis, it's probably going to become standard practice. It's
Mhm.
going to, lead to the ability for our patients to be able to take more preventative approaches or be more proactive in their care, add more visibility, just like we're seeing in a lot of other areas. And ideally make it more personalized for our patients. So just knowing how some of those downstream things can impact us, and it could lead to more, requests for information. It could lead to more educated patients reaching out for possibly like amendments or something like that. But then I also think on the payer side of things, they could be using similar tools like this to predict or, like we could see coding guideline changes, we could see payer requirement changes, maybe, prior authorization changes, all sorts of things that, I feel like anything and everything could be on the table as more data, as it becomes more clear when this data is being digested by AI.
Yeah, I'm chuckling because you said payers. I have no doubt that they're already using it. I'm sure many of us that work
Yeah,
that
for
capacity, they're
sure.
probably already ahead and thinking of ways that they can
Mm-hmm.
utilize it more. So
Yep.
exciting times ahead. So those of us that may be feeling a little bit weary of AI, what are your final thoughts to our listeners and um, any advice you would give?
Yeah, change is hard for everyone a lot. And I think we're used to that in certain arenas in HIM, especially, coding, billing, all of those types of things. We're used to the rules changing just as we get them under our belt, right? So just understand that, yeah, this change is coming. It's going to happen. It's going to be something that we have to embrace, just like the other areas where change is just the common. But we need to be really thoughtful about how some of these things are coming about and staying informed.
Yeah.
Making sure that you're collaborating, across different areas in the organization, just to make sure that we're doing what's best for everyone involved, and we're ultimately keeping our patients safe and the data as clean as possible.
I would agree, Jessica. I appreciate so much you joining us today and sharing your insights on AI. As, like you said, I don't think that word or that those two letters are going away for sure anytime soon.
Yeah,
So
it was great to be here, and I really enjoyed talking with you today.
thanks, Jessica. Thanks to those of you that are listening. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to subscribe and leave us a comment. Thanks, everybody.